So Minions: The Rise of Gru has been out in theaters for a few days now, and there's been a lot of hype surrounding it, especially since the trailer came out with Yeet rapping over it. If you don't know who Yeet is, he's a rapper who's blown up in the past few months, like, to an insane degree. If you're like on TikTok at all, you'll probably hear his songs like at least once. If you're on there for like 5 minutes at max, is how long it would take for you to hear one of his songs. But that, of course, led to hype, and people have been attending the showings of Minions: The Rise of Gru in suits, and they've been making videos about it, which of course has been driving a lot more hype towards Minions: The Rise of Gru. In fact, it almost seems like this is what Sony thought Morbius was, where like people were just like so enthusiastic about it because they were memeing on it. And this is different because this movie is actually kind of good, and I'm going to talk about it for a little bit. You know, there's been a lot of positive reviews about it. Even on Rotten Tomatoes, Minions: The Rise of Gru got a very positive score. Everything else aside, let's get into the actual movie, because I'm pretty sure that's what most of you are here for. I'll be using clips from the trailers and certain clips that I can find on YouTube. I'm not going to be using them often because I will get claimed and then the video just won't be allowed to go up. It's a really weird thing. I don't make any money from this, so if it gets claimed but they allow me to post it, I'll still post it because I really don't care. So we start off in an establishing shot, sort of zooming down to the street, showing us that we're in the 70s. In fact, there's even a sign that says Bicentennial 1976, which is a good way of establishing what year we're in. There's a lot worse ways of doing exposition, and this was one of the better ones. So we see Gru, and it's been established in the Minions movie that he's already met up with the Minions, so they're sort of doing their thing. Gru receives an audition with the Vicious Six, which is basically a play on the Sinister Six, and they need a new member because they betrayed their oldest member, the leader, Wild Knuckles, who had just went on a Raiders of the Lost Ark, I want to say, is the one where Indiana Jones switches the things. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'll put a clip up. But after they go through that, they head back to their lair after they think killing Wild Knuckles. Spoiler alert, he's still alive. Obviously, spoilers for everything in here. I should have added that at the beginning, but I didn't, so that's not the best, but whatever. So Gru goes to his interview, but before he goes in, he gets to meet Dr. Nefario, which was a pretty cool sequence. I really liked it. Like seeing how young Dr. Nefario looked. And we see him once after this point, and then that he's pretty much gone for the rest of the movie except for the mid-credit scene, which I'll talk about once we get to that point. But once he gets to the interview, they're like, "You're a kid. How could a kid be a villain?" Blah, blah, blah. And they just rag on him for a little bit. And then another guy comes in because they say next, and the other guy is named Wingman, and he starts flying around, but he doesn't control it well. So Bell Bottom, the leader of the Vicious Six, now that Wild Knuckles is gone, and all the other guys, they don't really matter too much. The only one you really need to know is Wild Knuckles and Bell Bottom. They're the only ones who really, really matter. But then Gru decides that he's going to impress them by stealing from them, which was always a bad idea. I don't know why you would do that. Like, these people are villains. They're going to be like impressed with how well you stole from them. But he's a little kid. I think he's like 12 at this point. So, actually no, he's 11. He's actually 11. So he's 11 years old, not making the best decisions, obviously. And there's a medallion, right? And everyone in the movie calls it a stone, and it got on my nerves so much. It's not a stone. It's clearly a medallion. It clearly has multiple gemstones on it. I don't know if they thought like kids were too dumb to understand that it's a gem. It has gemstones, but it's a medallion. Or just call it a medal. Just call it a medal. Everyone understands what a medal is. If you're 4, 3, or 24, you understand what a medal is. So we have a little chase scene where the Vicious Six are trying to chase down Gru with the medallion, and Gru has Otto, who's a new minion who's not in any of the Despicable Me movies. He flies off the back of the bike, and the medallion goes with him. And Gru says, take the stone and go back to the lair. We'll distract them and meet you there. So they get away, and after a while they're all celebrating at the lair, Otto shows up. Now this is one of the weirdest parts of the movie, because he shows up with a rock with googly eyes, and it turns out he fell in love with the rock. Alright, that's at least how I understand it. That's how it's portrayed. It's the whole hard eyes like type of thing. Well, not hard eyes, but hearts around him. And he sees the rock wink at him, and he's like, oh man, let me trade this rock for the medallion. And Gru's very angry, and so Gru fires all of the minions, which was ridiculous, right? Like, you don't have to fire every one of the minions. I understand that he's angry and emotional, but like, you need the minions to find out where the medallion is. At the very least, he could have been like, once we find this medallion, you're all fired. Or if they don't want to work, just be like, hey, well, if you guys find me this medallion, then you won't be fired. But as Gru leaves to go find the medallion, he's walking down the street, and then he gets kidnapped. But Kevin tries to chase down the van, and obviously he can't catch a van, so the van pulls away. He never had a chance of catching it, and he's just up the creek without a paddle. And so Otto leads Kevin, Stewart, and Bob to the house where he gave the kid the medallion. Turns out the kid gave it to his uncle, who's this really smooth 70s guy, this jive turkey type of guy, and he's leaving, right? So Otto sees him leave. Otto hops on this tricycle and follows him, which that's a really fun subplot, but we're going to talk about that more later on. And Kevin, Stewart, and Bob see this bus to San Francisco, and they're like, oh, okay, so forget getting the stone to save Gru, we're just gonna go save Gru. Which, I mean, I guess is what they're trying to say, but obviously I don't understand the minions, so it's weird, like, when they try to communicate to each other to forward a plot point, and I have no idea like why they made the decision. I feel like they should have at least deliberated about it a little more. They just say a few things to each other, and Bob, I think, is like, oh, where's Otto? And Kevin's like, oh, we gotta go. And they just leave. So then they get to the airport, and they don't have any money, so they decide, hey, we're gonna steal pilot outfits. And most times I can wave off the fact that the minions have these disguises that are really bad, but in this case it was just insane. Like, first off, they're yellow. Stewart is pushing all the buttons and somehow gets the plane to start up. It starts taxiing through, it's almost hitting planes, and then it takes off and is just about to hit ground control and pulls up and does not hit ground control. It was very lucky, but it was the second luckiest thing in the movie, and it was followed up by the luckiest. So planes, as I'm heard from like people online who are like involved in aviation, they pretty much fly themselves at this point, but like you still have to like guide them, as far as I'm aware, right? And they do like guide them at one point because there's a plane on the radar. So what they do is they start diving and like coming up and diving, coming up like Free Willy, which I don't know how they didn't throw themselves off course, but they land perfectly like in San Francisco, and they're completely fine. Like, they didn't crash or anything. Again, the luckiest thing in the entire movie by far, clearly, right? So it is what it is. So once they get off the plane, Kevin, Stewart, and Bob, 3 minions that are already in San Francisco at this point, decide to go to the house. Well, actually, they're dropped off right in front of it. Super convenient, but it is what it is. It's just a kid's movie. You just turn your brain off. I'm just pointing out certain things that weren't so good before I get into the stuff that was really great. So they are watching the house, and this is something that I did enjoy. They try to sneak through, and they actually get caught. I thought they were just going to be able to sneak through, even though they were clearly moving. And at one point, like the the time that they're moving right before they get caught, like he clearly, like one of the henchmen clearly sees them duck their head back into the pot that he's sneaking around in. So it was super obvious that he was moving, right? And I'm glad they got caught. A little bit of realistic sprinkled into this insane plot. But anyway, they get chased out of the property and they end up outside this kung fu slash acupuncture master, and she takes down the henchman. It's a pretty cool moment, I guess. Oh, for the most part, it makes sense. You know, she's beating them with like speed. It'd be weird if she was like punching them and just throwing them across like the alley. Instead, she's like running around them and like jumping on them and punching them really fast. And there's no way they could react in time. So it makes sense, right? So they're all beat up, the henchmen are, and they go away. And the minions ask Master Chow, I'm getting her name is, to train them in kung fu, which again is a cool moment. And they they beg her and they give her these like puppy dog eyes, these minion dog, I guess you could say, eyes. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll train you. And it's really weird because once they start training, Stuart is really like cynical and he really doesn't want to try to train, which is weird because he was begging right along with them. He wanted to do it too. I don't know what caused him to change his mind, and it would have been nice to be like showing a scene, but like from the instant he starts training, he's like, when I say showing a scene, I mean like show a scene of like why he doesn't want to do this all of a sudden. Like from instant one, he doesn't want to, you know, engage with this training that he's really wanted to do, clearly from the last scene we saw him in. But back with Gru, he has been tied to a record player that's spinning around, and eventually in 48 hours a blade will come in and dice him up. So I think the uncle was a pretty good addition to the whole thing. He was pretty fun. He was just a chill guy who's just like, oh, you want to go to San Francisco? I'll drop you off, man. Well, it is what it is. Have fun. I thought the kid who had the medallion was pretty funny too. Like how his hair was, and the fact that he got a haircut from the fan. A weird concept. I think Gru was handled really well. I liked how he was sort of interacting with the people around him. I liked watching him grow up as a villain and slowly get better, you know, from this advice that he was getting. And it wasn't like he like sucked completely. I mean, he was from like the beginning. His first scheme was pretty good, you know. I'll drop a stink bomb into this movie theater, and then once everybody clears out, me and my minion friends can go sit in and we'll just hang out in here. I thought it was pretty good. I liked how he was I liked his dynamic with Wild Knuckle. Thought that it was a really great relationship. It was really chill. I don't know what happens to Wild Knuckle between Rise of Gru and Despicable Me. So Chinese New Year is about to start, and of course there's a celebration going on there. And while the celebration is going on, Otto joins into it, and he has the medallion on him. Gru sees him, and they have a reunion. Gru's like, oh, I'm so proud of you. And then the Vicious Six show up. Bell Bottom steals the medallion and turns her and her friends into these kaiju type of beasts. I don't even know if that's the word, because I'm just using kaiju as a word for big animal. So that could be wrong, but they all get turned into animals, and then the minions show up with their kung fu mastery, because Master Chow said, you guys are ready, and they all ran out the door, and she was like, for your badges or junior kung fu achievement or whatever, and she was like, they don't stand a chance. But they show up, and Bell Bottom instantly turns them into a bunch of dumb animals. They run around for a little bit until Kevin remembers the words of Master Chow, unleash your inner beast. And apparently they all remembered it at the same time, because they all like get this fire around them. It's not like a Dragon Ball Z fire. The tide starts turning, and Gru has been put up onto a clock, so he gets saved by Otto, and Wild Knuckles joins the fight, and he's about to steal the medallion off of Bell Bottom. Then Bell Bottom, like, because she was getting pulled down by his nose, decides to flick her nose up and blast him with fire. And I thought it was a good moment because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so serious. You wouldn't expect a moment like this in Minions Rise of Gru, like an obvious kids type of thing, but it's an interesting subject to delve into again for a kids oriented type of show. After that, they pretty much get defeated. Gru gets the medallion, blasts them all, turns them all into rats. They all get locked up and taken off by the AVL, who are in this movie. They're not very significant. That's why I'm bringing them up now. Then the AVL guy from Despicable Me 2 and 3. If you know him, if you've seen those movies, you know who I'm talking about. But he says that Wild Knuckles is going away for a long time. Wild Knuckles is super burnt up, and he's getting in the van. And after AVL guy says you're gonna be away for a long time, Wild Knuckles is like, I wouldn't bet on it. And I thought it was like a Jet moment from Avatar where he's like, don't worry guys, I'm gonna be alright. And Toph says he's lying, right? And it's obvious, like, Jet died, right? But they have a funeral for Wild Knuckles because everyone thinks he died. And he shows up at the funeral. He waves at Gru from behind a tree. He's doing a eulogy for him, which kind of makes sense because we haven't been introduced to anybody else related to any positive way to Wild Knuckles. So I guess, whatever. And after they do the burial, they're done with the burial, Gru gets in the hearse and Wild Knuckles is driving it. They talk for a little bit and they head off. And in the mid-credit scene, Gru hires Dr. Nefario. I thought this was all, a really great movie for just to kick back. I mean, you can pretty much enjoy this all. I mean, there's like a one fart joke. Other than that, it's like pretty chill. There's a nun that's pretty funny. I think they're just making fun of the Catholic Church. If I could speak correctly. Like, if they're these insane kung fu masters, I'm sure that they could spare like 20 seconds to go take out this guy. Not really a big thing though. I don't want anything to change about this. This is, again, not the greatest movie ever, but it is a good Despicable Me / Minions movie, right? It's not trying to be this insane over the top, like we're gonna say this message or that message. None of that. It's just, hey, this is a movie for kids. We're gonna make it, it is what it is. Convenient things are gonna happen, whatever. It doesn't have to be the tightest knit plot, which is good. It's nice to sometimes just have a movie where you don't have to, pay intense, close attention for all of it to work. In fact, sometimes it's better if you just sit back and just, chill. Like I've basically said already. Don't think about it too much. And it's almost like the Ethan Klein quote, but we're going to keep him out of this. This is a positive review. Overall, I liked the movie. Pretty much everything was good about it, just other than the things I pointed out. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to end it off here. If you have any constructive criticism in general, just drop it down because I want to get better at this. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye.